Rock ISD has partnered with Round Rock. Mayor of the City of Round Rock and the County Judge of Williamson County. Large undertaking and feel the City of Round Rock and Williamson County have both in the process, but the time has come for a decision. Therefore, as the mayor in writing by Chief Banks and Sheriff Chody in April of 2018, we stand ready to assist and support the district as it builds its department. Sincerely, Craig Morgan, Mayor, and Judge Bill Gravel, Williamson County Judge. So the reason I bring this up and read it for the public is this is new information that came out just last week. It came to me, and then the rest of the board got it today. So I'm bringing this forward for us to discuss this as part of the plan. Also, Seth Flowers, who was the co-chair of the Safety and Task Force, sent us an email last week announcing he was resigning. And one of the topics, two of the topics that he mentioned in his email to us was that there were questions about the task force, and then also the board had not given a deadline at our last meeting and had not required that. So if that's the determination of the task force that they need direction from us, then I'm open for us to discuss that as a possibility. Do we need to change the charter? Do we need to rework? We did not reappoint or appoint a replacement for the previous chair, Katrina, when she resigned. They chose it among themselves. So with that, I'll take any comments. You don't have any suggestions? Any feedback on recommendations? Ms. Weir, you're the only one here that you and Mr. Math reworked the charter back in January, I think, and you are our representative. But both of you are, Ms. Gonzalez. I know you all have been watching and participating in some of those, or at least attending some of them. You have any suggestions, comments?
Well, I do believe that this is really important information, and I'm sad that we're just now getting it, that it's just now concluded. But it is very straightforward, and it has an end date, and it has more direction as to what they're going to do for us. Round Rock PD, we knew where they stood, and now we know where Williamson County stands. So I don't want to guide the task force. I don't want to say too much. But they really need to digest this and give us some recommendations as soon as possible.
I would agree with that because they haven't even seen it, right? I mean, I don't know if you forwarded this. I asked
morning
that it be forwarded. And just like when Gravel came and spoke to them, we're not really giving them any time to digest and discuss where they're going, and they're having extra meetings, and they're trying to get done. And I know that they have a goal. I mean, I don't think they want to work into the summer. They know they're about to lose students, and they want to do a student poll, and that has to happen in May. And it's my sense that they're doing their best to get done as quickly as possible. And I think we still need to let them do that. I mean, we need to know the community's concerns for safety. Because there's a lot of things, is it just active shooter that everybody's worried about? Or is it the daily things of depression and suicide and anxiety and things like that, bullying that go on that the communities really think is more of a safety issue? I mean, I think that's going to be very important to our conversation going forward. And I think that's what this task force is really trying to do. So I think we've got to give them time to do that. Okay.
Mr. Moses and Ms. Vessa.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm a little surprised to hear the shock as far as the timeline. The sheriff, the police chief told us back 2017 that they were pulling out in 2021. We've known this was coming. I appreciate it being restated. I appreciate them, the mayor and the judge giving us a little bit more of a, yeah, we're actually going to do it. And that might help spur some more conversation because, again, I'll be the first man. I was a little frustrated when I thought we were showing up here last meeting to hear some options. Whenever we saw draft options provided by the task force that for some reason decided weren't to be shared with us. I'm frustrated that some members of this board were told by Seth that if we did not give them a timeline, that he would resign, and they did not share that with the rest of the board. There's a lack of information that's flowing, and it's hurting this process, and it's causing doubt in the process. We need information to flow to us so we can make good decisions, so we can make we can process things properly. And that's my frustration right now with this process.
Well, I will say that, I know that Seth had reached out to Steve, and he's not here to say what was said to him and what he said back. So, I don't know.
It was multiple people on this dais who he talked to, and they failed to share that with the rest of us. Because that may have impacted the conversation if we knew that we were about to lose a chairperson if we didn't give some type of timeline. Again, that's a very frustrating point that we have to make sure. We can talk about that Friday in Team of 8 to make sure that we actually are getting information shared amongst us as we go through any process.
Well, and I've brought that up before, and hopefully at some point we're going to talk about, having a way that we can communicate. Because I find it frustrating on numerous levels. And I knew that, that day, Steve mentioned to me that he had talked to Seth, and that was the first I had heard of it. But I didn't know anybody else had talked to him.
And again, I hope now that we have another letter from other elected officials and other law enforcement officers stating that, yes, they're pulling out, we can get some type of resolution. I know for me, again, this is just me as one person, the non-negotiable for me, though, is we have to have some people in our schools. We have to have some officers in our schools helping keep them safe. And not having them, to me, is an option. I'd love to hear. I think that might be some good direction to give to the task force to know where this board stands, where we all stand on whether or not we're okay having no officers in any of our schools. If we're okay with that, then that is another option that we can hear from. But if we're not okay with that, then that's a good thing to give them to consider.
Ms. Vess?
So I spoke with Steve yesterday, and he asked me to convey a few things, given that he's not here. One thing that he said was that from his part, he was okay with not having armed officers in middle schools, but going with another security measure, whether that be beefed up hall monitors. I don't know. He said that he was okay with another option, and that he felt like if we could ask Williamson County to continue their current number of SROs and just cover our high schools, all of which are in Williamson County, he felt like that was a compromise. My response back to him was that I wasn't convinced that Williamson County would be amenable to continuing their SRO program at all, and that we hadn't had any guidance that they would. But he seemed to think that that was a reasonable option to throw out there to them, that could you just continue with the number? We have 9 SROs with Williamson County currently.
Something like that.
So, just covering our high schools would still be more than that. But so that was what he had put forward as a discussion that he wanted us to discuss, how we felt about doing something different in middle schools and just having officers in the high school setting. He also gave me, once we talk about it, he also gave me an analogy he wanted me to talk about, but maybe I'll let you guys talk and then give you his analogy.
Let me just give a summary to Ms. Moore, just came in, the chair of the task force. So we started about 10 minutes ago. I just read this letter that I sent to you earlier. So just for your information, I hope you shared that with the rest of the team, or the rest of the task force. So we just have started the discussion, and the options are, it looks like the Williamson County and the Round Rock PD are not able to provide services going forward. And so essentially 2 years from the end of this school year is they're planning to pull out. They're determined to get out and move on. So it's up to us now. It's up to the task force what the options are. I will say I saw a headline right before I came over here. I didn't read the whole story, but it's about Betancourt, Senate Bill number 17, I think it was, to address more funding. I don't know if anybody saw that, if there's any more detail on it, but there was something that said they're going to provide more funding for schools. So, of course, we can't depend on that right now, but when the legislature ends or if it passes, that may affect what we decide to do. That may give us resources. And I know Representative Talarico, the bill that he introduced was a 4-to-1 ratio, I think, is that right, for counselors to SROs. So there is a lot of attention in the legislature and, of course, in the nationwide about school safety and mentioned active shooters. And is that our highest priority? Is that one of them? Anyway.
And that would be my question. I mean, that you want to know if we need officers. I mean, is that what we're most concerned about?
We asked the task force to tell us
Right.
that, and we're
And
waiting
I think
to get
they were
that
working
answer.
on their. I mean, we can ask.
Can we,
Lisa.
Mr. Ponik, we can have them come down because it's a posted item? Can we have to make a comment?
Yeah, you can ask for input from whatever source.
Okay.
you wish.
Because I know
Ms.
they're
Moore, would
working
you like
on
to come
their
down and-
on their questions for.
Can anybody that would like to speak for the task force come down?
I think that's fine, sure.
I would prefer to leave it to, since she's the chairperson.
Well,
let
let's let her start.
Let's
and
start
if
with
there's-
that, and then
okay,
let's
yeah.
go from there. I mean,
Well, this has been, I haven't been copied on all the emails, but I've seen a few of them. So anyway, Lisa Moore, chair right now, is that correct, of the task force? So.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Here we go.
You can close that lid so we can see it, whatever you want. You can leave it open if you want.
Well, so I know y'all were working on your questions for a survey today. Maybe is that what y'all were working on?
So actually, we met off of our usual schedule this evening to work on putting together the details for community engagement. And last time that we were together, we worked on developing a student survey. pending the ability to do that. We will. We felt like maybe we had a little bit longer time. We really wanted to focus on the student survey because school is wrapping up, and we felt like that we might have just a little bit more time. At this time, at this point, we're trying to prioritize our work, and so we knew the student survey was very important to get out before the end of school. And I think we felt like we could hold off a minute on a parent or taxpayer.
Question related.
Post the community engagement.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Moses and Ms.
And
Okay.
Ms. Moore, just know, this, if you can answer this may calm down some of my frustration. Is have y'all set some type of what y'all feel is realistic timeline to provide some options?
We have not. So after, when we were together last time, we really focused in on what we thought was a priority. I mean, we are working hard.
I
We're
know,
doing a
y'all
lot of
are.
work.
Y'all really are.
I'm not sure, why Mr. Flores thought that he needed to step away. I don't.
Flowers.
Mr. Flowers, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Flowers, it is the same, right? I'm not sure why he felt like he needed to step away. Things are getting hot and heavy. Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of work still left to do. And we've done a lot of work. And I'm not sure why anybody thought that this could, something really great could get produced in any less than a year. This is a lot of work. And we want to be able to turn over options to you that are very well vetted out, that give you a lot of good research. What would be that things weren't given in the last, what was a progress meeting? Just from the have not talked about it. And so I didn't think, and quite a bit of our task force didn't think, that we should sit here in front of you and the public and give you half-baked things and not be able to answer. That would have been quite embarrassing, I think.
No,
that would not have reflected well on this task force. And this task force is doing really good work, and we're not going to come give you junk just for the sake of helping you see that we're working. We are working. Are you watching us on Engage?
I am. And
Round Rock?
My frustration was that wasn't communicated until less than 24 hours before the meeting. And so we were getting ready for the meeting, expecting to see options, and then we got
Who communicated to you that we would be giving options at the meeting?
the charter. that timeline was in there and said that we'd be getting on
No,
at that time.
we had
And
said
so-
that we, well, hold on.
and
No,
no one
we
had
said
come in
that
and
we
said
were
we
going to
did
give a progress report, that we did not have. That was very clearly made by the task force. We did not have options ready to deliver to you, and we were giving a progress report. I don't know if maybe something got lost in the communication between our task force and you all, but
Well, I think the earlier version, because Nikki and I were on your email chain, and not everybody else was, and I think the earlier version of the presentation got posted for us, and then there was all the conversation, and y'all went back and changed it. So I think maybe that
I
was
saw it too, and I'm
that
not
was
on your
part of
email
it.
chain.
and we were not all
And
in
it said
agreement, right? And we
And I
were
didn't-
not all in agreement
I didn't
with.
see- I didn't see them as recommendations. I looked at them as options, potential options, but anyway. sorry, I mean,
Right, and
Fine.
so-
So that's that breakdown where there's these seems to be these things that there's always something that's kind of happening. So you get ready to, all right, great, they've done good work. We're ready to see what the options are, and then us spit it out and do what we need to do to get any more community engagement. And now it's, you know, at the 11th hour, rug gets pulled out, and you're like, all right, well, where are we at? What is a realistic timeline? How long is it going to take? Because whether we like it or not, school's going to start again in August, and there has to be a plan on what we're going to be doing this next year. And the city's got a plan, the county's got a plan, and there's going to be a plan for the year after that. And I know that seems like there's a lot of time, but if you look at that end date of 2021 and start backing it up, all of a sudden the timeline starts getting more and more compressed. And so that's what I'm working through, trying to figure out, all right, what is the drop-dead deadline that a decision has to be made by this board for us to meet, whether it is hiring basically glorified hall monitors to the middle schools, whether it's doing our own police department. What's that drop-dead date? A decision has to be made for us to make sure that by the start of 2021 school year, we have the pieces in place we need to keep our schools safe.
Ms. Filler, you.
So I'd like to start with saying thank you for all the work that you have done, because I do know that it has been a massive task to take on, and I can certainly respect the desire to be very thorough in what you're presenting, because it is it's a very crucial topic that we're talking about that affects really everyone in our district. So I want to applaud y'all for that. I would like a little more information about the content of the surveys. Are you structuring them in a way to get feedback regarding the options that you've come up with? Are you structuring them in a way to just gain information about experiences with law enforcement in schools?
The second, right now,
the
yes. From what
second.
we've worked on the student survey, it would be the second. I don't know if you're going to say something else. I'm
What
sorry.
I was just going to say, in general, and then moving on into the community engagement or town halls, whatever you're calling them, and then the parent survey that follows along after that. Are you looking for community feedback based on the recommendations that the task force work has done, or are you looking for? I don't even want to guess.
Okay. Well, we've not done any development on a non-student survey. So there's absolutely nothing on a non-student survey.
Is there an idea or a discussion
No,
about
'cause
what
we
you
haven't
hope to
even-
gauge or gain or learn from that kind of involvement?
Community input, and that's what our town hall is going to be, is community input. We're not presenting anything to them and asking them for feedback on anything specific. We are going to do a short briefing in the beginning, giving them context around the resolution, and sharing a little bit of our timeline presentation to them, the things that we feel that are important for them to understand and have background on, to understand what this discussion is about, and then we're asking for their input.
So are you thinking more of a just open mic format,
Yes.
throwing out, let's hear what your thoughts are on safety and
Yes.
security in our schools?
Yes.
Okay. And then based on the feedback from the town halls, then say we've heard these concerns, and then try to gather a larger population. I guess the reason I'm asking all this is I know you guys have done great work, and I'll speak on my experience on the CBC. You learn this stuff intimately, and you know facts and you know figures, and then when you try to go out into the community at a large, there is such massive amount of information to get out to a community that really loses interest after a couple of, maybe if you can get them to read 2 paragraphs, they're not going to read pages.
Right, we're keeping
and
it
pages
short and sweet.
of
Yeah,
all
we're
the
keeping
work
it short and sweet. We're not going
Right.
to inundate them with a whole bunch of stuff.
But you guys have done so much research and have so much knowledge on this topic that how to and maybe I'm just talking out of just throwing out options, but to hear what the community says based on the research that you've done, this is
these are your non-negotiables. What do you think about this? These are, possible recommendations. It doesn't even have to be these will be a recommendation, but here's, we've talked about hall monitors in the middle school. What are your thoughts on having just a hall monitor? And maybe try to get a response from the community at large now that you guys have done a lot of the nitty-gritty to say these are the real pathways that we see are viable options. And, what are the community's decision on, do they want an independent police department? Do they want no SRO involvement at all? Do they want a greater involvement of mental health? All of these things, and what does the community in large feel about the work that you guys have come up with? And I guess that's my main point there.
So we do have another meeting next Monday prior to the community engagement that we're trying to do, or that we are going to do, the 13th and 14th. And we did talk about that we would talk a little bit more. We'll have more task force members there, hopefully. And so thank you for your input. And we're going to talk more at that meeting to just get more specific with, how we're going to make the engagement. And that input from you is really good. So hopefully that'll start an additional discussion with our task force about what we do actually share with them to get the input that we believe, to get everyone's input and to really have them being very thoughtful about what their input is, because there's a lot of thought that goes into this.
And I understand Mr. Moses's frustration with the timeline, just because we've been given a timeline and we don't have the luxury of just saying, okay, you have this. But I also don't want a timeline imposed on you guys just to then say, well, we just have to do sloppy work because we don't have enough time. So I get the frustration on both sides of it. I guess that it's also a really busy time of the year going into May, and just an option possibly if people could submit written statements if they're unable to attend one of the town halls, and say, hey, here's an email address if you want to submit a written statement, because we're
going to offer them that opportunity as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Create an email that just says Round Rock Task Force PD whatever at Round Rock ISD. I guess fine.
Okay.
So I think that your feedback in terms of what should be on the survey was, I feel the same way. Like, I think we need more concrete, like, how do you feel about this option? How do you feel about that option? Because we are kind of getting to a point where we have to know what direction to start, like, really pursuing, details about. And also, though, like, as I said in the last time we met, I don't want us to even give, like, because I know that at least those people that I interact with, and even Steve, they still aren't giving up on wanting Williamson County to provide. And so, like, we go out in the community and they say, well, we really want to continue with our law enforcement partners, and the law enforcement partners are like, nope, not going to do that. What do we do as a board? Like, okay, we got the feedback from the community that they would really like to continue with our current law enforcement
I think we have
partners.
to inform them. I think the community
Yes, I think that's very important.
They have to know about this.
Yes.
They have to. Even if it's like when you have the community forums, this needs to be produced so they know why we're doing this, or why we're faced with this circumstance of no longer having any security in our schools. Why are we actually having these discussions?
Correct. And I'm thinking out loud here, and I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with any particular option,
right.
But that if this community, you put that information out there, I really hope that this community, because we want to be able to give you as many options as possible, I really hope that this community understands that they need to make their voice heard, and they need to go to the city council meetings, and they need to say, we don't like this. What are you doing? They need to go to the commissioners meetings, and they need to say, we don't like this. What are you doing? We pay taxes already for 2 law enforcement groups here in the city and the county. Why aren't you protecting our children? Why aren't you protecting our why aren't you doing this? How can you just get up and walk away and not do this? And if the community voice needs to be, they need to go push back on it. They need to go push back on it. Because why should there be a third taxing entity for law enforcement in this city and county? 3, we have to pay for that. I'm about to go protest my taxes. You know, we pay serious high taxes in this area. We should not have to tax a third policing entity, law enforcement. So,
Ms. Weir. Thank you.
Well, I'm actually going to kind of go back to what Amber was talking about for just a minute and on the survey, because one thing that I am very curious about is, well, like what I just said, what are the safety, what do people consider the biggest threats to student safety, to teacher safety? Because that will inform our decision a lot. Because if it is the daily anxiety, depression, bullying, suicides, attempted suicides, that's one very different discussion from if everybody's just worried about an active shooter. So, I mean, I hope that even to the students, you know, that's going to be part of what you're asking, what their concerns are.
What if one school is different from another school? Because
and they may be.
Like our
And they will.
community is not homogeneous at all. Like we have very different communities throughout Round Rock ISD. It's a large district, and it's very possible that we get from one community their highest priority is this, and then from another community their highest priority is that. And
But
so
at least that's data. I mean, to me, at least we know at that point, and we have that information. We're not guessing, you know, and we say, okay, Westwood they're more concerned about the anxiety. They're more concerned about whatever. And you know, somebody else is concerned about something else. And, I mean, at least we have that as data to inform our decision going forward, right? That's going to be important.
I want to add to this, kind of all related. Of course, we're working on our budget. We'll adopt the budget for this coming school year in June, at our June meeting. So we have a team of 8 coming up this week, and that's more of a discussion on kind of just general procedures for the board. But we will have another workshop, at least one, probably 2 more workshops on the budget. I'm not expecting the police department decision to be a big impact for this coming year. I just don't think that, unless I'm misreading it, because we're not going to switch. They've said in here they're available for the next 2 years.
yes,
And
and a lot can happen. A lot can happen in 8
And a lot
months.
can happen. It could be. You know, you mentioned something about paying for another police department, and I know that you all are getting information on the costs, and we have some general ideas, and we've had some.
No, we're not. We're not getting
Well,
any
there's been
information on that.
discussion,
You
but-
relieved us of that. Thank you very much. But one thing, just a comment that I can make to you, and we've not really had a full meeting since we have had a full meeting since our last presentation. But once again, we are definitely prioritizing our work because there is still a lot left to do. So what we can tell you, and we've not renamed our non-negotiables, but those areas, those overarching principles and areas that we presented to you on our progress report, those definitely all need to be funded. Those are things that all need to, if you want to know what to look at in your budget.
Okay, that's great. If that's your recommendation, you bring it back. That of course we need to know that going forward. It could happen for this coming year.
Yes.
But pick a number, whatever it is, to pay for an officer, and that means his equipment, the car, radio, all of that. Whatever we are paying that right now, either to Wilco or to the Round Rock, and there will be a slight difference, probably, but it'll be. We'll still be paying for that one way or the other for the officers. So we are paying for it right now to the police department. So anyway, Ms. Feller.
You actually covered what I was going to say.
What is that?
You covered what I was going to say.
Oh, okay. All right.
Thanks.
So anyway, so back to the budget. Discuss. I hope that you don't feel like you're limited. Oh, we can't talk about this or that. If it evolves into that, I hope you feel like you can at least discuss it and say, well, that's not in our scope, that's out of bounds. By all means, explore it. I hope you feel that way. The other thing is the next topic is Seth's replacement. The topic is, do we get involved with that? We didn't get involved in your replacement.
No, you did not.
My
Let them,
recommendation.
they can let them decide.
Yeah, I was going to say, if we did not spell it out in the resolution. If it's up to that's your decision.
At our last meeting, because we literally received the email resignation from Seth the day of our last meeting, our last full meeting. A lot of people had not even read the email. We discussed it briefly because we had a lot of work to do. We discussed it briefly, and I asked if we could continue having our meeting and do all the work we had set out to do in our agenda, and that we would table until next time any discussion about nominations or anything like that, because a lot of people did not know, and a lot of people weren't even at the meeting. So we decided that we would push it out to our next full meeting for any discussion.
Okay. So you're right now tentatively planning to have your town hall the 13th, 14th, is that right, of May, somewhere along that?
We're still trying to confirm the venue for the
Confirm dates
14th,
and all that.
but it should be that date. We've got a list, and we're just trying to find the availability.
Will you have, that same week, we're having a regular board meeting on the 16th? Will you have
I'll
some
be here.
information? Will you have some information or recommendation? It doesn't have to be,
Well, they won't even have, though they.
When I said I'll be here, I'll be here as a community member.
Together
Right, I'll be
between
here as a
Monday and
community
Tuesday. That
member
would
at your
be-
board meeting.
Pull it together.
Give them a chance to meet after that.
Yes.
I don't, again, I've probably seen 5 emails. Somebody said, oh, you ought to see this email, and I'll read through it and kind of, okay, I'm not on the, I don't know how much business you're conducting via email. And if you're sending it out and saying, is everybody okay with these proposals, and everybody gives a proxy vote?
You know what? So that very first one, and the one that probably presented confusion, when the initial draft of our progress report went out, it had more than just task force members on it. It had more than just task force members on it and our board of trustee liaisons on it. And so that was kind of that should not, it doesn't matter how it happened, but that is probably the beginning of what led to some confusion for you all, because that should have never gone out to all the people that it went out to. So we have just a task force distribution list, and I try to use that as much as possible when we're talking about things that's our business and we're trying to, go through this and that. We do not do a lot of work email because there's some people that they just don't even, they just don't respond to it and they don't see me email. It's not the best way for us to do our work. And so, and once again, at our next meeting, the agenda is already growing about, what's the priority for our next meeting? We only have 2 hours. But what we did talk about as we were disbanding today to come over here, kind of had a strange, everybody just kind of got up because we knew we needed to get over here. We do need to, we did talk about that we need to discuss, and we said this the last time at our progress report, we need to discuss the work that we have left to do and what we are actually presenting to you and the effort it's going to take to put that together. We will be breaking probably into teams to accomplish that, and talking about how we can meet more frequently. And so that really needs to be the priority of our next meeting, and I'll make it a priority of our next meeting. And so, everything we're saying tonight, we're going to do at our next meeting. It's not going to all happen at our next meeting. And so the prioritization will be on figuring out the work that we have to do and how long we believe that will take us to accomplish that.
So one of the topics that did come up, and maybe it wasn't this last meeting, but maybe before, was to maybe break into 2 or 3 teams, and one would be Wilco, one would be our own, and one would be another. And now with this letter is that we can't go to these people and say you need to vote on this and put on the agenda. But as you said, the community can go out and say,
yes, they can.
is this what your plans
I'm
are?
going to ask you to not shut us down on options. You asked us for what the options are, and we're going to give you what we have come up with, the options that this task force was asked to provide you. And we would like the time that it takes to put it together and to give it to you fully vetted out, fully thought out, with all the information that you need to digest.
So do you think after your meeting next Monday, though, you'll have more of a timeline?
I think that we can look at producing a timeline, yes.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, should the community voice make a difference in this letter and either of these entities were to change their decision, I think this board would be more than happy to consider that. So if your recommendation does include something from Williamson County, obviously it can't be an option until they change the position that they've put us in this letter, but I think that it should be included if that's something that you as a task force see as a viable option. And people talk. So, I mean, that's the community, that's the influence when you're working with elected officials. So if there's enough movement that either one of these entities do change their and reverse their decision from what they've given to us, then we know that is an option from the task force, and that gives us some option as we move into the future. So I can see how you would still present a recommendation that says we would prefer to work with a relationship. We understand based on the letter, April 25th, that the city and the county both want to end in 2021, but it is still the recommendation of this task force to maintain a relationship there if at all possible. I could see how that could be a recommendation, and then should that position change, I mean, obviously we can't influence the position of those two entities, but should it change, then we know what the will of the task force is.
So what's your last comment? So I was going to ask you the question, what influence do you have? How can you push back as this board of trustees, who this community is trusting to this community thinks that you have ability to push back and thinks that you have the ability to light a fire under these entities and say, hey, this is what we want to do. And not only that, you also have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of Round Rock ISD to not put any more costs on taxpayers. So what ability do you have, and have you done that?
So I'll tell you, my perspective is that up until really Friday, Wilco wasn't an option. We knew that we knew that Round Rock, their preference was to terminate it in 2 more years. We knew that the city of Round Rock, but Sheriff Chody came in January to your meeting and held up his packet and said, here's my proposal from a year and a half ago. It still stands. So that was an offer. Then when Judge Gravel came and spoke to your group, was it 3 weeks ago now, something like that, and said it still is an option, but there are stipulations to it. 7-year contract, 110%, full authority. And there's 1 or 2 others. That became more difficult, but it was still a viable option. And then as of Friday, this looks like they don't even want to participate. So now we have as much voice as every citizen does. We can make a request, and they can listen, and we can do that. So,
and we also have to remember there's a good chunk of the district that isn't in the city of Round Rock. Mm-hmm. There's another chunk of the district that's not in Williamson County. And so that's the struggle that we deal with, is that there's...
Well, and Judge Gravel made that clear.
Right.
I think in y'all's task force meeting, he stood up and spoke to that issue. That's something that's been out there that he doesn't even know. So that is an issue. And while, yes, we would like for things to stay just like they are, this letter says that they're not going to do it. So why do I want to work with people that don't want to work with our kids? That's the part I'm real frustrated with. I can push
I'm not
back
sure that
all
it's
I
that they don't
want,
want to work with the kids. Why would you say that?
because they're backing out of our schools. They're continuing their police work with citizens, but they specifically are not. I get it. It's spelled out. So we have to be like, do I want them? Do I want to force them to work with my kids? My kids. They're all my kids, I guess. That's just a question. I don't know.
But the business is with the district. The business part of it is with the district. It's not with the kids.
But they work with our kids on a daily basis.
But what I'm saying is, though, the agreement and the business behind all
Sure,
of it,
it absolutely
and all of that,
is.
and the monies and all of that, the thing that makes them be here or not, based, obviously, while we're all sitting here talking about this, is business with the district.
It absolutely is. But the end of the day, for me, is the relationships that they're building. And they're taking those relationships away now. So now I'm going to tell you, you have to do something. Are you going to be begrudging? I don't know. These are questions that we have to talk about. I want people in our schools that want to be there. So.
Okay, so you've gotten clear direction, which is things are changing. We appreciate your patience, your willingness to consider options. We're not giving you direction, I don't think, tonight, other than to carry on, keep going. I think it's a great idea what you're doing with the survey, the community town hall, getting input. If you need to put it on the agenda for the May and just say this is what's happened, you're not making a recommendation, we'll leave that as an option. It might be a 5-minute presentation. We can do that.
Can I just respond to one thing she said, like, what are you doing as trustees to try to make this happen? Well, I personally have a lot of experience with this because right now I'm trying to influence what happens at the legislature. And I have the same approach in this particular instance too. I can't go to the legislature and tell them, do this. I don't have that power. I can say, this is what is the impact is going to be on our district. This is what we would prefer. And a lot of times I can't speak for the board. I can just say, this is what I would prefer. Okay, then I can inform as many people as I can to contact them and tell them their opinion. And it's the same thing here. We have met with them, talked to them, like said, I say every time, this is what I hear from the community. This is what they want. This is what they think is best. And believe me, they will tell you. I'm very emphatic with that. But ultimately, we can't tell them what to do. And the only people who can tell them really what to do are voters. And they can choose to listen to those people or not. Because ultimately, they have been elected. And then the voters will decide whether or not they like their decisions come next election. But ultimately, they have the final authority. We can't force them to do anything. I can't force the legislature to do what I want to on school finance reform, and I can't force the Round Rock Police Department or the Williamson County Sheriff Department to do what we want. Or I don't want to say that we've already decided what we want, but I think you get my gist. We can't force them to do things. They are ultimately sovereign unto themselves, and then people will decide come next election whether they like their decisions or not. And so we can encourage people to voice their opinion. And I am constantly doing that. I am constantly getting information out to people and saying, please contact your elected officials and voice your opinion. Because that is the only way that if you want them to change their mind, that's the only way they're going to change their mind, is that they feel the community is telling them that if you don't do this, we're not going to reelect you.
Ms. Weir.
Well, I was trying to look up real quick, because there is, under the specific powers and duties of the board in the Texas Education Code, it does say the board shall seek to establish working relationships with other public entities to make effective use of community resources and to serve the needs of public school students in the community. So that is our job as a board. Now, I mean, we haven't been the ones to reach out, as far as I know, not since I've been on, but that is something that, if we could get the community going, and if that is what the task force suggested, and there's letters, I mean, I would think, and this would be maybe a Doug question, but that would be something that Chad, as board president, could reach out and say, we're tasked by this. State law says we've got to have a working relationship to make effective use of community resources.
And that's a great point, but in also saying that we have reached out to them. We had reached out to Judge
We had them come in,
but we haven't always got them to come to us, even though we've requested it. So to say that we haven't reached out, we have. And hey, we'll continue to reach out. If that's what we have to do, we will. But it's not always them willing to come to us.
Well, I mean, we also got to remember, from our standpoint and from their standpoint, for it to be effective use of taxpayer dollars, it's got to be a win-win. If it's a win-lose, it's going to be a no deal for us or them. Whether it comes down to us having to pay 110% of the cost, or it comes down to them getting full control over officers on our campuses, or us being able to actually give officers that are to us some discretion in how they discipline kids and making sure they're actually trying to help them and not having to force them down some type of criminal path.
No,
so it's got to be a win-win for both of us.
No, and I totally agree with that, and I think just coming into this a little bit later and sitting on the other side and not being part of all of that, there is just this sense of a turf war, and it's frustrating for me on this side. So I'm hoping that we're going to get some good guidance from the community that we can then take back, because they are also the constituents of the people who wrote this letter, for the most part. And we sort of need to get past some of that turf war ego
I
stuff.
will say, I've been neutral up to, I mean, I've had some discussions preliminary saying, is it possible? But I haven't been advocating for one way or the other. You know, I just wanted to know, was the option for the Wilco to continue, was that still an option? And the answer was it was until recently. So, you know, now it looks like it's changed. So anyway, Ms. Feller.
So my last comment was, obviously I don't want to give direction to you guys. I want you to have the flexibility and the freedom to run as you see fit. But I would love to see some feedback from the community when we have these opportunities to do the town halls and the surveys, to see how they respond to the work that you've done and the recommendations that you've come forward with, because I know that has been even a feedback that we've gotten so far in the task force is that, you know, more people wish they could have participated in the process rather than, you know, the 30 to 40 that were on the committee or however many like that. So really giving a broader voice for the validation and you know, our opinions either way on the work that you guys have done of, yeah, we really like this and we've got a groundswell support for this option and not this. So that's an option, an opportunity that we necessarily as board members don't have, to reach out and send an email to, you know, 100,000 parents to say, hey, this is what's going on. Can we hear from you of what you're... So I'm excited, or I hope that we'll get some feedback from the community on your recommendations as well. And that's just me speaking, but I don't know if the rest of the board agrees
as a
with
board of trustee, just out in your community, you don't get hammered with a lot of questions and comments and thoughts about this from people.
Yes,
Here goes Board of
I
Trustee
do.
Vessa.
You know what, we do, but there's also a lot of people that don't know.
Exactly.
I actually
I'm just curious
band
about
instrument. I mean, you know, was there with all the incoming sixth graders, and people were like, "Hey, I've heard." I'm like, you know, where have you been? But I mean, there's a lot of people that have no idea.
And they're speaking to their issues, and maybe specifically about
Right.
their student or what's happening
Sure.
on their campus, and they're not aware of
The
the
broader
task
picture.
force. Yeah.
And living in a community that is serviced by the police department, people that live over on my side of town really don't even know about the involvement of Williamson County, because we don't have any Williamson County officers in our schools over there. And we don't even have 100% coverage in our middle schools over there at all times. And so, you know, it's definitely different perspectives on where you live. And to talk about, well, we want Williamson County to continue, they've never seen a Williamson County cruiser in front of one of our schools ever, so it's not even an option that Joe Public has really considered that lives in my part of town. And when you talk to them about that, they're like, I didn't even know Williamson County was in our schools. We live in the city of Round Rock. Why would they be in our schools? We've got Round Rock PD cars out in front of our schools. So, again, it's that broader education piece, that there's so much to this. And if I could sit down and spend an hour with everybody that says, hey, what's this about? And I could lay them through, okay, these are the options, these are the barriers, these are the... But I would say the majority of people are not well informed about what's been going on in general if they just are staying in their microcosm of their neighborhoods and their schools.
We are also very eager to get that community input as well, and of course you'll have to make some decisions about options. I'm sure, you know, based upon that community input. Also, you know.
So I'm going to make a clarification. Earlier I said that was Betancourt. It's actually Senator Larry Taylor from Friendswood, who has Senate Bill 11. It passed 29-2. First legislative session after deadly mass shooting. Talks about approved sweeping school safety bill Monday aimed at preventing or at least mitigating another mass tragedy. So that's just something for us to consider. I know that the options, and you're not tasked really with the budget and the costs, but in reality our options are one cop or one SRO per classroom. Is that feasible? That'd be great, but that's pretty expensive. Or that's facetious. So just so everybody knows, I'm just kind of using that as a, you know, so from anywhere from there on, or do we go with one officer per campus or two officers? Somewhere in there's a range. So, you know, I want you to keep in mind, okay, if somebody comes back and says we did an SRO for every classroom, well, I don't think that's feasible. So I'm just making clear that was a... So anyway,
So
that's
in
the
the-
point, is just keep that in mind, in the back of your mind about the
The funding
options.
in the bill that you're referencing was $50 a student. which is for our district is about $2.5 million, which is actually about what we spend on SROs currently, to my knowledge. But that's what the proposal is in that bill. It's $50.
Okay, I don't see it in here, but anyway, maybe it's just, anyway, that's great. That's a good start. That means more funds released or available for something else. Okay, any other comments? Yes? Yeah. Okay. Any other feedback, comments?
Well, I appreciate you allowing us to continue to do our work and allowing us to, not shutting down any options, because we would like to be able to be as creative as possible and give you the 3 to 5 options that you asked us to give to you. And we are working diligently to bring that to you.
That'd be great. And I just, for your information, for clarification, everybody else, I drop in on the meetings. I have been attending most of them. I don't stay always the whole time. I'm not there to try to learn the best option. I want to listen to your proposal. I just want to see if the discussion is going, it's civil, if everybody speaks fairly, if it's, and I don't see what goes on in the email, but for the most part, it's conducted well.
And so that's another thing that
if I'm missing
I have
something,
to
let me know.
In Seth's resignation, he used the word dissension. And once again, probably half the people didn't even see the email. A couple of people responded back, I'm sorry that you feel that way. I do not believe that that this task force believes that we have dissension, and I'm not sure why that word was used. And if you've been watching us on Engage Round Rock or you've been at the meetings, we do not have dissension. We have various opinions. I mean, we're going to have the opinions across the board, just like this community has got opinions across the board about this topic. And so we are having good discussions, and we're questioning everything, and we're having good discussions. And people get to speak their truth. Everybody's got a different experience. When we laid our ground rules out from the beginning about how we talk in this environment here, just because you haven't had the experience doesn't mean that someone else hasn't. And so we're having great discussion. We can get heated, just like any kind of discussion can get heated. This is a heated topic. We do not have dissension, and so I really didn't even feel like responding back to his email to even have a discussion about it, because I didn't believe that it was valid. I didn't even want to validate his comment that we had dissension, and really no one else did. One of our task force members responded back and said, I'm sorry that you feel that way. I don't believe we have dissension. I believe that we have got varying opinions, but not dissension.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because when I saw the email too, as I've dropped in on the meetings, I hear different opinions, but I didn't think it was dissension. I didn't think it was dysfunctional. That's part of the discussion. We have discussions. We have different opinions up here. And I think it happens at the legislature. It happens everywhere. That's what's great about this. So I took that the same way, so I'm glad you brought that up. And I don't see it as dissension. I see it as discussion. And that's your purpose, and you're doing a great job. So carry on is what I say. All right. Anything else? Dr. Flores, any comments?
No, the only comments that I have is the continuance of work. I think that, Ms. Moore, you're doing a fantastic job, and your job just got tougher. But you've handled it with grace today, discussion saying you need more time, and the resources of a survey and some other things, I think those were forthcoming. I do think that there is clarity that is provided by this letter. But at the same time, what does that mean for us as we move forward? I think in the collective good, I think we can find out what that is for the future. And then eventually, the last thing I'll say is that eventually this board's going to have to make that tough decision. It sounds like more and more. We can engage the community and the entities, but eventually what the role of the school district and the superintendent of schools is to assure that all the needs of all students and all staff are met. And I'd love to say the city is partaking in that, Williamson County, ACC. However, in the end, it's ultimately this board that I report to, and so I know that in the end, the more information that you guys gather and as you continue, the better we're going to be for a decision that I said the last time you made the presentation. I think we get an opportunity to get it right and make it a model for the rest of the state of Texas. Thank you.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. With that, board members, we'll go to, we just finished agenda item D, discussion task force. We just finished that. E, I don't think we have any need to go back into closed session. Everybody okay with that? We'll go on to agenda item F, board announcements, future requests for future agenda items.
I just had, we were talking about budget, and are we setting our dates for our budget meetings on Friday? Because I feel like we're, like 6 weeks away, and we've only had a presentation from Ramiro and then a presentation on healthcare, and we haven't, and I'll tell you, my phone was blowing up over the weekend about 5% cuts and that kind of stuff, and we haven't talked about any of that. So I was just wondering when we were going to set our dates and start having the budget discussion.
We need to do that. We probably need to have at least 2 more workshops in addition to the May meeting. And of course, your committee meetings are kind of feeding into that. Both, your committees are deciding. So if you're ready, if we want to set a budget or we want to discuss it on Friday, if everybody, we can.
Yeah, Steve's not here, so I don't
Right.
necessarily want to set a date
Let's
right now.
just come ready.
But
On Friday.
Talk
come ready
about
on
it.
Friday,
Set a
and
couple
then
times. Yeah.
Yeah, staff's prepared. I mean, those
yeah,
are
May
things that
9th. I
we're
know
ready.
I had May 9th down as like a tentative, and then my other thing, I did send the email about to continue our special ed discussion, and since I asked that y'all not respond to me, so we weren't in violation of open meetings, I didn't know if anybody had responded, if anything had happened in that way. So I don't know if that's something we can set now, or without Steve, if we need to wait till Friday for
I
that also.
responded to Patty because I'm not home. That's
That
the
week.
one week
Okay.
that I was gone.
And I didn't know. I just didn't want it to fall off.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that we got back to that topic for sure.
Yeah,
So I mean, can we just add that for Friday as
Sure.
when we're
Yeah,
setting our
we
calendar
have,
dates, please?
We have a lot of flexibility on Friday and what we can discuss, and with Steve being there as well, that'd be a good idea. So let's try to nail that down, all the things we need to talk about. All right. Otherwise, I think that's it. I was going to make a real quick comment. I went to the job fair on the Stony Point the other day, and it was good to see a lot of people there. It seems like every year it's getting a little bit fewer people, and I don't know if you count every year how many, but I think I asked a couple of the teachers, the applicants, and they said some of it's electronic, some of it they know. Okay, there's only 2 openings at this campus, 3 at that one. So anyway, but I'm just glad to see that there are still many applicants interested in coming here. So, all right. And for that, nothing else? Make a motion. We'll take adjourn, or we are adjourned. 7:54.